Thanks for joining Federal Marketing Insights. My guest today is Monique Robinson, Principal Field Marketing Manager, Public Sector at Informatica. In this segment, we'll move the conversation to digital and social media. We finished up our last conversation talking about social media, how do federal marketers get up to speed, how do they learn, what choices they have, and what's going to be most valuable to the marketing that they're doing. So now, since we have all these choices, and we hear a word called attribution, and attribution basically is who are we giving credit to with all these different digital choices now that come with all this data. So Monique, how do you manage expectations around digital marketing opportunities?
It may be a little easier in terms of assigning attribution from social media, in particular because our CMO is a big social media guru and expects a lot from social media. So when we do things such as like search engine optimization or pay-per-click, we often put in tracking codes to allow us to determine where the leads or contacts are coming from. So for us, it's a little easy to say, hey, this campaign was successful because of this, LinkedIn email promotion, say for example, or this search engine optimization, and we're very easily able to track that through our Marketo system. So for us, giving attribution is not that difficult, and we give high fives anytime we see social media helping to drive.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great, because sometimes we meet with clients and they are heavily reliant on a search engine because everybody types in something with search engine and then they see that as their attribution and then they give credit to the search engine. And what you're saying is you have tracking codes so you can see through that search engine and see where that ad came from and give the proper credit.
Exactly. You
That's
got
great.
it. Yeah.
That's great. That's a great best practice there. So now, since we also looking at digital, sometimes it's hard to do that branding. So in our first segment, we talked about a consistent branding message as we move with agility to different segments of the federal marketplace, depending on where the funding is coming from. With digital, how are you seeing that branding being accomplished?
There are so many people engaged in a corporation that can actively engage in social media, so blogging or Twitter. What I find is quite important is that everybody is prepared and trained on your message, right, the company message. And I think before it used to be your traditional PR people or those that spoke on behalf of in press releases or being interviewed by the media that were the only ones that were trained, right, to know your company branding and messaging. And now it is so important, specifically at the federal level where we have, our business development folks, we have our chief strategists, we have our industry marketing, all these people, and myself participating in social media, that we all have to have the right message.
That's great. So it's a compliance. It's internal communication to make sure everybody's on the same page, delivering the same message with consistency.
Yeah, and to add to that, we have major themes that we're all trained in. We call them go-to-market themes. We have 3 of them, and everybody better know them and know the value that they bring.
So that's if you're with Donald Trump in the elevator, you hit the 3 themes and you're there.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
With all of the different data that we now have available through digital and social media, a lot of leaderships or a lot of people that are managing corporations like to look at data. They like to look at spreadsheet, not to name any names. But as a marketer, we have to interpret what the data means, and we have to communicate that internally to our leadership. Sure. So how are you doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ralph. So as I explained before, we are, our company is really embracing social media. And so when you talk about these data sheets, the way that we approach it is every quarter we have to project out and tell our CMO how effective our campaigns are. And part of that is discussing how successful social media has been. And again, we are able to track that through the campaign codes that I talked about previously. So for us, and it's been ingrained that to get our company to the next level, we have to grow via social media. That's plain and simple. It's cost effective, it's viral, it allows you to reach the masses. So really showing any kind of positive impact social media has making to us at the federal level is a plus.
Social media sounds great. We do a social media campaign here. It's difficult. You have to come up with a lot of content, and coming up with content is hard. It sounds great out of the box, everybody's excited about it, and then you get that kind of social media fatigue when it becomes a burden to come up with social media.
One of the beauties of social media is that there's so much social sharing that you can actually play off of other people's messages, right? So this means you really don't have to start from a blank sheet of paper, right? You can just contribute, add, disagree, agree with other people's comments. And we do this often. So when we're putting together a social media plan, we may say, you know what, we're going to blog once a month, say for example, and we will have a very integrated plan on what that blogging will accomplish or include. But in the meantime, as we're tweeting or blogging or responding, we're playing off of other people's messages. I think the challenge is in your responses, making sure that your response has teeth and gets people to react and change their behavior.
Right. So how do you manage that? So you have a lot of people communicating on social media. Yeah. Is it, hey, these tweets are my own opinions, yeah. Or do you have a filter that you go through?
Oh no, we have been trained on what we can and can't say. Again, branding, making sure, but we pretty much tweet and blog on what we feel is important and making sure we're knowledgeable on the subject.
We have found that thought leadership is a great, and you mentioned the word efficient with social media, because in essence it's free outside of the time commitment.
Exactly.
So. Or pay-per-click. Yes, thank you. So we've found that thought leadership can be very impactful and innovative through social media. So what have you seen?
And some of the best practices that we have in terms of thought leadership is we really encourage our social media engagers to join groups, right, and give relevant content to those groups. We think that's very, very important. And we really try, I think a lot of companies are using social media to promote their events. So we really try to limit that and maybe do more 70% content contribution and 30%, hey, we have this great event coming up. As you continue to contribute to groups, you become thought of as a thought leader, right? And we have, again, I think as you become thought leaders, having people change their behavior and that behavior becoming actionable. And we have seen benefits in being thought leaders. Some of our tweets or blogs are now being promoted on other sites or some of the big vendors or media
are picking it up. That's great. You've LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest. You have the common ones that I think a certain generation knows, and then whenever you have a teenager in the room or someone in their 20s, they're on something I've never heard of or saw.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're targeting social media, how are you keeping abreast of what's new, or then making sure what you're using is applicable?
Yeah, so I think with social media, the government may be a little bit behind the trend a little bit, and not as up to date or forward thinking as our kids, as my kids. So I believe some of the recent studies that I heard is more government folks are using Facebook. So continuing to use Facebook efficiently and effectively. I think government is starting to tweet a little bit more. So making sure you're out there and retweeting a lot of things that they post. And then third of all, I think that for federal marketeers, LinkedIn and the LinkedIn Premier is kind of the next wave of really getting your message out there. So, and I think as kind of next steps and where things are going, you're going to see a lot more video being incorporated into social media.
Great. And we're seeing those same themes. So this is a great conversation. In our next break, we're going to hit the exciting world of lead generation. This is Federal Marketing Insights.